Good afternoon, I'm Dennis Vittorian, and this is the 25th hour, helping you remember everything that happened beyond the 24/7 news cycle. In the fallout of New York Attorney General Leticia James' report on Cuomo's sexual harassment scandals, the governor has had his allies drop support for him left and right, including the chairman of the state Democratic Party and lawmakers from the legislature, some even compromising the Assembly Impeachment Committee, which are now going into high gear. To make sense of the recent events, we have a special guest on the show, City and State senior state politics reporter Zach Williams. Zach hails from California, where he reported for the Daily Californian before he moved to New York to get his master's degree from the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. Zach has been all over the Cuomo fallout, including authoring a recent article titled Cuomo Impeachment, They're Gonna Have to Pull Him Out. All right, so Zach Williams, thank you so much for joining the 25th Hour News. It's a pleasure to have you here. I think that the first...
Thanks so much for having me.
I think that the first question that I can ask you, with all of the things that are happening with Andrew Cuomo in the state of New York, can you recap what even happened so far? I mean, if somebody just browsing the headlines is going to see that there was an attorney general's report and it basically substantiated some sort of allegations of sexual harassment against Andrew Cuomo. So can you just recap for our listeners what we're dealing with today?
Well, the state capitol in Albany has been bracing for nearly 6 months for a report from Attorney General Leticia James on alleged sexual misconduct and assault by Governor Andrew Cuomo. The investigation's been going on and on and on, and people have called for his resignation, but the governor and his political supporters have said, hold on, let's see the report. And it finally arrived Tuesday. I personally believe that something that was so critical to the governor was whether it would confirm what was already known. You know, this litany of accusations from women that have worked from him, alleging a toxic work environment, sexual harassment, and worse. But I personally believe that if all James's report did was confirm what we already knew, the governor could argue, hey, we already knew about this. Why should I resign now? As confusing as that can be, given he said we should investigate it. But the report delivered, confirmed everything we already knew and more. There was another accusation, including from a state trooper who said that the governor had touched her inappropriately. This was just beyond the pale. Apparently, most legislators in New York have had enough. His remaining political allies in organized labor and key members of the legislature have said the time has come to resign or face possible impeachment. Now, impeachment is a little bit different in New York State versus the federal level. Like the federal process, you would have the assembly, like the House of Representatives, draft articles of impeachment, vote on them. A majority vote would send those to the Senate, which, along with 7 justices of the State Court of Appeals, kind of like the Supreme Court of the state, would join together from an impeachment trial. 2/3 vote would remove the governor, but we're still a long ways from there. Even a expeditious process would probably take 4, 5, 6 weeks. But members of the assembly seem ready to pick up their pace from here, and it's nothing good for the governor.
Yeah, it seems like they were waiting for this report to drop in order to finally solidify what their political positions would be. Would you agree to that?
Well, the impeachment inquiry is about so much more than just the alleged sexual misconduct. It also includes allegations that his staffers had covered up data showing how many nursing home residents died of COVID-19 in hospitals. Remember that?
Yeah.
Safety concerns at the Mario M. Cuomo Bridge, as well as alleged self-enrichment and the use of state resources to write that $5.1 million book that he published months ago. So a key question will be how, whether the assembly will just say what we've heard from the attorney general is enough, or whether they're going to wait to conclude the other parts of that investigation and come through with a really super duper set of possible impeachment articles against the governor based on a whole range of accusations, not just what the attorney general uncovered. That said, it looks like they're looking to get things done sooner rather than later, with sexual misconduct being the tip of the spear, if you will.
And how did you take the governor's reaction to the report dropping? Because it almost seems as if he didn't think it would turn out that way. I mean, he's been prepping a reply in the sense of already calling Leticia James's attorneys biased against him due to past investigations from some of the attorneys into him. And how did you take that? Because it almost seemed as if he thought he would eke it out after the report.
Well, there's a simple strategy with any type of political problem: deny, deflect, distract. The governor's been doing all three of these things for months and months. He said he wanted this investigation. In fact, the attorney general needed him to refer the matter to her in order for her to actually investigate it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to move a little bit here because of a loud vehicle.
No problem.
But, it's he got what he wanted, an investigation. It wasn't quite what he wanted originally. He wanted investigators that he would be better able to control, but he eventually gave the referral to the attorney general. And, he reacted, but as months went by, he started sowing doubt about the integrity of the investigations, Letitia James's political aspirations, trying, kind of like what Trump did with the Mueller investigation, paint his tormentors as irredeemably biased, and people just aren't buying it. Letitia James played it cool. She didn't react to him. She just let her investigators do their thing. And the report was just so compelling, 168 pages, thousands and thousands of documents, nearly 200 interviews. She brought the receipts, and the governor just reacted defiantly, saying, people know me. I would never do such a thing. Well, there's a 168-page report by the attorney general that says differently. He came with, 85 pounds of gobbledygook saying, what about this? What about that? But, nobody wants to read what he has to say at this point. It seems, it just hasn't made the difference. And key supporters, again, I got to stress, people have been keeping him in office are Black supporters in the Black community, like Hazel Dukes and NAACP, and organized labor, powerful union groups like 1199, DC 37, groups like that. They're both turning on him, which really suggests it's just a matter of time before he's kicked out of the place.
It seems to be such a sudden, quick fall from grace. Is this something that you would say was inevitable of Andrew Cuomo? Because he's, as he said, he's been in office for a very long time, and he claims that this is not who he is. And if we're being objective, is this something that we could have seen? Is this something that we could have?
Don't count him out. I would say, given what we know about the governor and how he runs his office, it should be no surprise there would be scandals alleging wrongdoing. We've been through this before. First of all, 6 months ago, when all these allegations broke, nursing homes last year and everything going on with COVID-19 there, as well as serious ethics allegations years ago from his inner circle. I don't know if you know about the Moreland Commission, but he had approved a commission of super duper investigators to find everything wrong with state government, then pulled the plug on it, said it was his investigation when they came too close to his inner circle. So am I surprised that bad things came out about Andrew Cuomo? No. I would say, though, don't count him out. The old maestro has a few tricks up his sleeve. Right now, he wants to delay for time, not resign immediately, wait a few weeks, see if public opinion might solidify like it did months ago. He isn't done yet. Just because Joe Biden and everyone below him has said he's got to go doesn't mean Governor Cuomo's going to go. He still gets to be governor until 2/3 of the state Senate, with those justices I mentioned in the State Court of Appeals, vote to remove him from office. And we're weeks and weeks away from getting to that point. So he could still survive this. And given the Democratic lean and kind of the zero-sum politics of elections, maybe he'll get reelected. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying it's possible still.
Yeah, I definitely want to delve into the future political prospects of the governor with you in a bit. My first question before that, however, is now that we know what the political ramifications are, obviously we see Cuomo's world around him start to crumble, and the state legislature finally has something concrete in their hands to start picking up the pace. But was there any sort of concrete civil or criminal liability from Letitia James's report?
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I can't say definitively he'd be charged with this or that, but he is accused of touching women, the state trooper, as well as an executive assistant who was supposedly lured to the executive mansion. He has been accused of touching them inappropriately. That seems to suggest some type of battery charges could be possible, touching people against their will. We'll have to see. There's, I believe, at least 5 local district attorneys that are requesting information from the attorney general. Some of them could file charges down the line. We'll see. I think the consensus is generally the governor does not have a huge criminal liability with this.
Mm.
That said, one of his accusers, Lindsey Boylan, has already announced that she's going to sue him.
Mm.
We'll see what could come out of that. She could get some sort of monetary damages. But something you got to keep clear in all of this is the main body to hold elected officials like Cuomo, as well as his staffers accused of wrongdoing, accountable. Some call the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. This toothless, much maligned agency created by Cuomo years ago to make it look like elected officials could be held accountable, but is actually controlled by him and other elected officials, the Assembly Speaker, the Senate Majority Leader, through their appointments. Mm-hmm. So good luck holding them accountable through that process. We'll see what happens with the legal system, but really this is a political question, just like with impeachment at the federal level. Will the Assembly impeach? Will the state Senate and those justices from the state Court of Appeals vote to remove him? That's what it all comes down to. That's the only thing that can stop him from becoming governor anymore, unless he's suddenly arrested. But I just don't see it quite yet.
That would be such a dramatic picture in the headlines, and I already know that Zeldin would appreciate that happening.
Keep in mind the grand scheme of things, sexual harassment is not a criminal offense by and large.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything that the legislature is attempting to do to fix that in the future, or is that they're focused solely on addressing this report now?
Well, there is a generation of younger lawmakers that have pushed for a lot of changes in ethics laws, as well as changes in the state sexual harassment laws. Mm-hmm. That's why now, we've gone from a lower standard to a higher standard to require it. The so-called severe and pervasive standard of old is no more. That said, you got to keep in mind there's a lot of old legislators that got something to lose if you strengthen those ethics rules too much. I don't know about you, but I don't want a bunch of people getting up in my business. And some of them might be seeing the same thing, maybe wondering what they did and how they might be held accountable. All of this to say, reforming ethics in a place like Albany that has such a long run. They had hearings on this like 2 years ago. Disgusting behavior by state lawmakers. People pouring lubricant on their staffers' arms. I don't know if your boss does that, but mine sure doesn't. Changing a place like that takes time. And right now, the big question of whether that can happen is whether the governor, someone who's been accused of relatively minor transgressions in the grand scheme of misbehavior in state government, still serious. People think this should cost him his job. We'll see if it happens. We'll take it from there.
Now, if I was Cuomo, would I have any, and I'm refusing to step down, and I'm also refusing to shut down my re-election campaign. Do I have anything to worry about in terms of a Leticia James gubernatorial campaign?
Cuomo has a lot to worry about right now because nobody seems to support him anymore. That said, he's got almost $20 million in the bank, lots of time to recover his political position. Would Tish James challenge him in a primary? Up until her report came out, I was inclined to say no. Their support overlaps to a significant degree, especially in the Black community, organized labor. It would be kind of tough for her to kind of carve her own niche right there. But the governor is politically wounded now. Maybe she'll inherit a lot of his allies. Way too soon to tell about that. It is possible, though, if the governor does resign, she would certainly be one of the people talked about as a potential candidate. But don't take your eyes off Kathy Hochul, the lieutenant governor. Yeah, she spent the last 7 or so years cutting ribbons and maybe doing stuff that doesn't get a lot of attention. But she's well-known, well-liked. Yes, her base of support is out in Western New York, but she will be the governor. And if she is able to solidify her position very quickly and leverage whatever honeymoon period she might get, she might surprise people. Also could get, in a general election at least, could get independents and maybe some Republicans, just because she has more of a moderate record than many in Albany. And unlike the governor, people seem to like her.
Is there anybody else that could come out of the woodworks in order to run for governor?
Third person, a few other people that are mentioned is Comptroller Thomas Napoli, who's the longest serving statewide official. I think he would have an edge if there's any sort of desire among the electorate for kind of a technocratic, no drama type of candidate. That could hinge on maybe Hochul looking like she's just going to serve the remainder of Cuomo's term. Maybe she says she won't run for re-election or for election. So maybe there's an in. DiNapoli can raise money. He's from Long Island, which isn't a bad place to be in a gubernatorial race. That said, he still has to really show people that he wants to do it. Another name that's been mentioned is State Senator Alessandra Biaggi. She's been among those young lawmakers who've been very vocal about changing the culture in Albany. Few people get under Team Cuomo's skin like Alessandra Biaggi, who actually used to work for his office many years ago. But I've heard a pretty compelling rumor that maybe she would be interested in running for lieutenant governor. She's only in her 30s. She has lots of time. Lieutenant governor, just like with Gavin Newsom in California, might be a nice place to kind of build a statewide presence and avoid accusations that she's not waiting for her turn, especially if people like Leticia James, DiNapoli jump in the race, or if Hochul looks too strong to maybe take down. We'll see what happens. But those are 4 names that are being thrown around right now. And then a 5th, just for fun, Bill de Blasio. I don't know what rationale he would have to run in a Democratic primary for governor other than to troll his friend, his longtime frenemy, Governor Cuomo. Yeah. So if Cuomo goes, I don't think de Blasio is going to run. If Cuomo stays, de Blasio might be the only one with any chutzpah to actually run against Cuomo. If Cuomo survives this, you got to ask, can anything destroy the guy? Bill de Blasio will investigate. Probably make an ass of himself, though, just like when he ran for president.
I think you have a pretty successful campaign slogan for a de Blasio gubernatorial run right there. If Cuomo's done anything wrong, de Blasio will investigate.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, if you put your money on it, do you think Cuomo is going to stay governor next year?
I think the big question is, will he run for re-election? He still has a card to play. He can say, I'm not going to run for re-election. Let me see COVID through. Let me help with gun violence, but I'm not going anywhere. And shame on you for politicizing the pandemic. Shame on you. He could still play that card.
Okay.
That said, it's not looking good. You really got to ask, can he retain people in his administration? Will agency heads resign? Will he be able to argue he's an effective governor? If he avoids a mass exodus of staff and agency heads, he can say, look, I'm not running for re-election. I'm focusing on the job of the people, just like his one-time mentor, Bill Clinton, once upon a time. But if that card doesn't do it, he has nothing else left. And he might very well be removed. But I don't think he's going to resign anytime soon. Very few longtime political watchers have said anything different, that they're going to have to drag his ass out of there.
Before the report dropped, there was an interesting question about whether lawmakers would accept Cuomo saying that he wouldn't run for re-election in exchange for finishing out his term. Do you think that's still on the table for lawmakers?
Again, you got to look at some key Black lawmakers. Crystal Peoples-Stokes, the majority leader in the assembly. She has said he should step down. She hasn't said she would vote to impeach him quite yet. And there's quite a few others that are kind of like that. They clearly want him to go. That said, will they go? Will they actually? From a lawmaker standpoint, Cuomo has signed everything they've wanted this past year. He's basically said, "Leave me alone. I'll sign whatever bills you want." It must be kind of nice. Yeah. Right now, a lot of lawmakers seem to be saying, you know what, the bill's coming due on that arrangement. As the party's coming over, we can't do it anymore. But, the next week or two, if Cuomo survives that, his chances of survival increase exponentially. And there's no way to get him out in the next week or two, except utter shamelessness. And I just don't know if Andrew Cuomo is capable of that. He has some cards to play. What if he drops a bomb on other key people here? What if I'm not going to say who or what he might know. That's just speculation. Yeah. But we saw this in Virginia, where the lieutenant governor was going to take over when Northam had that whole blackface thing. And then he was facing charges. And then it's like, well, you can't remove this guy because that guy's going to replace him. Things can get complicated quick. And Andrew Cuomo only needs time. Right. He wants to be governor through the end of 2022, one day at a time.
And let me just make sure that we have everything else covered here. Now, imagine I'm Lee Zeldin, okay, the congressman, the Republican congressman. What would you tell me if I asked you, out of all of this chaos, do I have a shot at becoming the next governor of New York?
I'd say you better get off the crazy train pretty soon. Lee Zeldin, they're going to run against him and say, Trump, Trump, Trump. This guy voted to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Lee Zeldin can say, blah, blah, blah. I just didn't like the state legislators were getting ahead of, or that judges were allowing all these, absentee ballot, blah, blah, blah. State legislatures get, that's way too complicated. Republicans have been successful in the Trump era when, however intellectually disingenuous they've been, they've had very simple messages. Lock her up, fake news, stuff like that. Lee Zeldin is not going to win by making nuanced arguments about the future of New York. He's going to win by saying the Democrats are corrupt. Shame on them. They went after Trump, and now they let Cuomo be governor. If Cuomo goes, that's no good for him. And honestly, the registration advantage Democrats have, and the Republicans just have not distanced themselves from the poison pill that is Donald Trump. Lee Zeldin cannot argue that he has not spent the last 4 years sucking up to the guy. That's just not going to win you a gubernatorial election in New York. So if I were to offer him some friendly advice as a scumbag journalist, I would say you better pivot quickly to the center. You better think of some clever lines to explain all the crazy Trump stuff you've been tied into, and cut out the culture warrior stuff. I don't think the Republicans are capable of that. He's got to win a primary. So he's going to be talking to, he already is, and so is Andrew Giuliani and probably Astorino too. Critical race theory, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to win an election in New York. He's got to put up huge margins in upstate. If Republican can do that, he's got to probably win or at least be very competitive in the suburbs on Long Island and Westchester. And he can't lose by 80 points in New York City. I just don't think Lee Zeldin is capable of that unless he really grabs the center as quickly as possible. But his odds go down. He better hope Cuomo stays because that's his ticket. People bring up George Pataki. George Pataki, in addition to being more moderate than Lee Zeldin, in addition to having some experience in the Capitol, that was recent for Lee Zeldin was a member of the Assembly, but George Pataki was playing three-dimensional chess when locking up support from the ultra-Orthodox community in places like Curious Joel. This guy knew the levers of elections and knew how to respond to those interests without going off into crazy territory. And Lee Zeldin, as far as I know, maybe he's doing clever things to win over constituencies, that can give him a lot of votes as one, like ultra-Orthodox and places like Rockland County. But I'll believe it when I see it. George Pataki won. We heard the story. We saw how he did it. Lee Zeldin is still writing that story, and I just don't see him playing cleverly enough to win a general election. He's too busy winning a primary.
Now, my last question for you before I let you go is, what do you think Democrats learned in all of this? I mean, so on the one hand, we have Democrats trying to wrestle with how they handle sexual harassment in general, from running all the way to throwing out everything, baby plus the kitchen sink with Al Franken in Congress. And then, they looked at Cuomo and, we had Jay Jacobs, the chair of the Democratic Party, say, we need due process. We need due process. What lesson are Democrats going to take out of this entire episode with Cuomo?
Sometimes you don't need the guy. Cuomo has been the all-powerful king. He's got a whole system built around him, but the grass is green. New York is still blue. If they get rid of the guy, I bet there's a lot of legislators that are probably wondering, what's this guy really done for me lately anyways? Has he raised money for me? Andrew Cuomo's not known for being that type of leader. Has he intimidated me? He is known for being that type of leader. A lot of them are probably like, you know what? It was fun while it lasted getting our bills passed without any scrutiny. But, Kathy Hochul, she'll be a little bit weak to start with. She'll have to either keep the Cuomo people who aren't so loyal to her, or find her own people who are less experienced to take over the second floor in the Capitol. And, maybe life under Governor Hochul is filled with a little bit more sunshine and hope than keeping Cuomo in power when all he's doing is embarrassing your party right now.
Is this a optimistic age for Albany if with Cuomo, if Cuomo leaves?
It's optimistic for people that don't need Cuomo. Some people have relationships with him that go back. Maybe their brand of politics is similar to his. But if you're one of those millennial lawmakers who got in the office, calling him a son of a bitch, other than, there's other punching bags out there. I'm sure the Republicans will provide many of them. Governor Hochul will not have a honeymoon forever, but life could be good for the Democrats. It seems like when they're all getting along, they get to do what they want, and Cuomo's made it impossible for them.
Got it. And Zach, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is very important for our listeners to know about what's happening with Cuomo?
I mean, a man accused of sexual harassment that's not the worst accusations in the world could be held accountable in Albany. That's a very huge novelty in state government. In terms of Al Franken and Me Too and everything else, like the Democrats are deciding, we're going to draw a line with this guy. Maybe Franken should have stayed. Maybe he should have gone. But, it's better to get rid of somebody and maybe regret it later than be accused of a hypocrite by the always disingenuous Republicans who are calling for Cuomo's head, even though they never said anything about Trump, who was accused of much worse.
Got it. Zach Williams, thank you so much for joining us here on the 25th Hour News. We hope in the future we can get you back on and talk about whether Cuomo stayed or did he go. So thank you, Zach. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this interview with the 25th Hour. I want to thank our special guest, Zach Williams, City and State Senior State Politics Reporter. If you like what you heard, please share, subscribe, and rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support the show, please become a patron today for as low as $2 a month at patreon.com/25th Hour News. Thank you, and I'll see you on Sunday.